So obviously we don't need to tell you, right, that we're living in times of ongoing uncertainty, whether it's the global pandemic, mass shootings, civil unrest, war, or threats of war, beyond threats of war, now we're in war. Right. There's a lot going on in the world, right? So not to mention, newsflash, we're all still having a human experience. So personal, relational, professional, and physical related challenges happen at any one time in our lives. So this model is designed, right, to help you and us, right, identify and address the core barriers to what we call true success, which are uncertainty, stress, work-life imbalance, and burnout. So let's get into steps 1 and 2, all right? So the first step is slowing down, grounding, and regrouping, right? So we just talked about life is uncertain, a lot going on, it's challenging. There's no off or button, right? No down moment unless we create it, right? So as we lean into our commitment to be better to ourselves, create a better life for ourselves, which is why we're members of the Joy Society, whether we're experiencing uncertainty, stress, work-life imbalance, or burnout, we really need to slow down, regroup, and get ourselves grounded, right? This is step 1 of the true success model. So many of us are caught up, right, in worrying about what might be about to happen, while we're also dealing with real life challenges. And slowing down and grounding ourselves really just allows us to disrupt what oftentimes we fall into, which is this experience of worry and internal intensity, right? So much to where we kind of just get stuck, right, in that mind cycle, right? This allows us to kind of tap into the best of ourselves as we're trying to figure out solutions to get some relief from, whatever we're dealing with. So Amber, what are your thoughts on what it means to get centered and grounded, and exactly how do we do that?
Well, first, I think really just taking a pause. And that's so powerful, right? Because first what it does is bring oxygen to your brain. You take a breath, you pause. So now I can think. Because sometimes we're just moving and we're not thinking. And really being in that present moment and just being. Just be. That present moment, pause, so that you can now figure out what, right, we're going to go into this next steps, but figure out what's going to happen next for yourself.
You know what I thought when you said that, like, people are like, is that it? Like, just pause? Like, because that seems so simple, right? But I think about, we're both licensed clinicians, so we do clinical work. I do executive coaching, and, it's so funny, people, not that life isn't hard. Like, I don't want to underestimate or not value or honor anything that anyone is going through, because life is hard, right? But so often we think that the answers to the question or the problem are like so complex and hard, but really the truth is, would you agree, like sometimes it's like really, really simple. And so this is to me one of those examples of something being like almost embarrassingly simple.
And it doesn't have to be this long period of time, right? So you're thinking like, oh, I have to pause for, no, in that moment, just pause. Just pause.
Yeah, and that's the reason why we even kind of set this up, because if you think about it, and this is one of the challenges we have and have to always work to overcome, even in the work we do, we know that just about everyone in the world is looking for a better life and wants to do better and be better. And we'll even say to ourselves, I'm struggling, I really need to do X, Y, Z. I need to work out more, I need to do this more, I need to slow, right? But we don't, right? So like, what happens is we go months, years even, without responding to what we have already acknowledged as a need that we have. So this is why step 1 is to slow down, ground yourself, regroup, and just simply pause. Because until you do that, you don't even create the space or have the space to get to solutions. So as simple as this was, don't sleep on step 1, slow down, ground, and regroup, right? So we'll talk about the actual actions for grounding and centering in part 3 of this module. But for now, just know that's step 1, right? So obviously in step 2, we need to give ourselves grace. And the reason why is we can become really hard on ourselves and become our own worst critic, regardless of what's going on. It's important that we give ourselves grace for wherever we are, whatever's going on, whatever we may feel we've done wrong, whatever we feel like we should have been better at, because this is all the crap that goes on in our head. We oftentimes, oh, I should have done this sooner. Oh, if I wouldn't, and so as a result, like we just get stuck in that versus solutions. So giving ourselves grace is step number 2. Amber, what are your thoughts on giving ourselves grace, what that looks like, what it means to you even?
I think first, celebrating the wins. Maybe the pause is the first win, right? I paused, right? Celebrating those small wins. And remember, practice makes progress. Not perfect.
Oh, okay.
Practice makes progress. So the more we practice it, the more we practice pausing, the more we give ourselves grace, celebrate our wins, the more progress we are making.
And that perfectionism is a huge thing.
Yes, it is.
Right?
Yes,
so,
it is.
I know when you first started in the Joy Society, even though you're in this moment, you're working as a trainer and an expert. You're also a human with a whole human experience. And I know you've been working on some goals. What were your thoughts, or what have been your experiences as it relates to the need to give yourself grace, or your struggle to be able to give yourself grace?
And I think that that's the hardest thing with being a therapist. Like, you're supposed to have the answers, right? And no, that's not the case, right? And all of us do something different. And a lot of times we put that expectation on ourselves, like, oh, you should have this together. But in reality, we're all learning, we're all growing. This is what life is. It's continue to grow, it's continue to reflect, continue to make that progress, right? So yeah, it's been
you've struggled with, and we've talked, sometimes you've gotten so caught up in identifying what hasn't been going well, which then has prevented you from being able to focus on solutions and level up.
Yes.
What do you talk about? Like, what do you think? What has been your experience with just that struggle of focusing on what you haven't been doing well?
Well, it's a constant battle. I mean, in our minds, and we'll talk about minds later, but until I had to start telling myself, no, what was your wins? I literally had to, once again, I'm going to keep going back to this pause because I would start to see myself not celebrating those wins and saying, oh, well, you didn't do this. Well, but what did I do?
Yep.
There was progress. There was things I did, but we don't give ourselves that grace, that credit when we deserve it.
Yeah.
We deserve it.
Yeah. So that wraps up step 2, right? So you'll notice step 1 and step 2, pretty simple. We don't spend a lot of time. We don't go deep because they are simple, but again, don't sleep on them because these are things that people don't do. And as a result, they can't really get into the meat of all of this, which we'll get into in the mid steps, because they don't pause and don't give themselves grace. So that wraps up step 1 and 2. We'll do some reflection, and then we'll move forward into the TRU success model.